I am sitting in my living room right now watching my 9-year-old daughter Lily run across the backyard, her laughter filling the afternoon air. Just 20 minutes ago, I received a phone call from my mother. Her voice was shaking, tears choking every word as she begged me for help. 5 years ago, this same woman refused to save my daughter when Lily was dying. She chose a wedding over her granddaughter's life. Now that she has lost everything, she suddenly remembers she has an eldest son. Before I begin this story, let me know where you are watching from by leaving a comment below. If you believe in justice and karma, hit that like button and subscribe to follow this journey with me. Ask yourself this question. If someone abandoned your child when death was knocking at the door, would you forgive them when they come crawling back? Keep your answer in mind as you hear what happened to my family. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and secrets do not stay hidden for long. My father, Richard, worked as a manager at the local bank, a position that gave him a sense of importance he never let anyone forget. My mother, Linda, handled accounting for several small businesses in town. Together they built what most people would call a comfortable middle-class life. We had a nice house, 2 cars in the driveway, and enough money to never worry about the basics. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. But appearances can be deceiving. My younger brother Derek came along 4 years after me. From the moment he was born, something shifted in our household. I was too young to understand it then, but as the years passed, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Derek got the expensive toys while I received hand-me-downs. Derek went on special vacations alone with our parents while I stayed with our grandmother. When report cards came home, my straight A grades earned a nod, but Derek's C average was celebrated because he was trying his best. The rules that applied to me somehow never applied to him. By the time I turned 16, I understood that waiting for equal treatment was a waste of time. I got my first job bagging groceries at the local supermarket. I saved every dollar, opened my own bank account, and started planning for a future that would not depend on my parents' favoritism. When college came around, I earned a partial scholarship and worked 2 jobs to cover the rest. I graduated with honors and 0 debt because I refused to ask my parents for a single penny. Derek, meanwhile, had his entire tuition paid by our parents. They bought him a car for his 18th birthday. They rented him an apartment near his campus. The contrast was so stark that even relatives started whispering about it at family gatherings. I moved to Columbus after graduation and built my career from the ground up. I worked long hours, took on extra projects, and slowly climbed the ladder at a marketing firm. I did not have time to dwell on the unfairness of my childhood because I was too busy creating my own life. Then I met Courtney. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when I walked into a coffee shop near my office. The line was long and I was impatient, checking my phone every few seconds. When I finally reached the counter, I looked up and saw her. She had warm brown eyes and a smile that made the stress of my workday disappear instantly. She was not the barista. She was just another customer who happened to step up to the counter at the same time. We laughed at the awkward moment, and somehow, that laughter turned into a conversation which turned into exchanging phone numbers, which turned into dinner that Friday night. Courtney worked as a nurse at the local hospital. She came from a family, nothing like mine. Her father, Harold, spent 30 years as a plumber, working with his hands to provide for his family. Her mother, Dorothy, taught 3rd grade at a public elementary school for over 2 decades. They lived in a modest 3-bedroom house that Harold had maintained meticulously over the years. They did not have much money, but their home overflowed with something my parents' house always lacked: genuine warmth and unconditional love. When I asked Courtney to marry me 18 months after that coffee shop meeting, she said yes without hesitation. We decided on a simple wedding. Neither of us cared about impressing anyone. We just wanted to start our life together, surrounded by people who truly loved us. Harold and Dorothy offered their backyard for the ceremony. Courtney's aunts prepared homemade food. A friend played guitar during the reception. 50 guests attended, and every single one of them was there because they genuinely cared about us. My parents arrived 45 minutes late. My mother, Linda, wore an expression of thinly veiled disappointment as she looked around the backyard setup. She handed me a card with a check inside the amount barely covering a decent dinner for 2. As she hugged me, she whispered in my ear that the wedding was a bit simple for her taste. My father, Richard, shook my hand, made small talk for exactly 12 minutes, then announced they had another engagement to attend. they left before we cut the cake. Harold and Dorothy gave us their wedding gift later that evening after most guests had gone home. It was a 15-year-old sedan that Harold had spent months restoring in his garage. The engine purred like new. The interior was spotless. Dorothy handed Courtney the keys with tears in her eyes. "This is everything we could give you," she said. "It is not much, but it comes with all our love." I hugged them both and realized in that moment that I had finally found the family I always deserved. 2 years into our marriage, Courtney told me she was pregnant. I remember the exact moment. We were sitting on our small apartment balcony watching the sunset when she handed me the positive test. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity before the reality sank in. I was going to be a father. I was going to have a chance to give a child everything I never had. I promised myself that night that my son or daughter would never question whether they were loved. Lily arrived on a rainy March morning after 14 hours of labor. When the nurse placed her in my arms, the world stopped. She was so small, so perfect, with 10 tiny fingers and 10 tiny toes and eyes that seemed to hold entire universes. Courtney was exhausted but radiant. We sat together in that hospital room, our daughter between us, and I understood for the first time what people meant when they talked about love at first sight. Lily grew into the happiest baby I had ever seen. She smiled constantly, laughed at everything, and had her mother's warm brown eyes. Harold and Dorothy drove over every single weekend to see their granddaughter. Harold would sit on the floor for hours, letting Lily climb all over him. Dorothy sang lullabies and read picture books until her voice went hoarse. They were the grandparents every child deserves. My parents visited twice during Lily's first year. The first visit lasted about 45 minutes before my mother claimed she had a headache. The second visit was even shorter. My father spent most of it checking his phone and talking about Derek's new job. Neither of them held Lily for more than a few minutes. Neither of them asked about her milestones or her personality or what made her laugh. They treated her like an obligation rather than a blessing. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself that Lily had grandparents who adored her, and that was enough. I buried the hurt deep down where I had buried so many other disappointments from my childhood. I focused on my family, my career, my life. I convinced myself that the distance between me and my parents was just the natural evolution of an already strained relationship. I had no idea that the true test was still coming. Lily was 4 years old when our world collapsed. It started on an ordinary Wednesday. Courtney had dropped Lily off at preschool that morning like she did every day. I was in a meeting at work when my phone started buzzing repeatedly. I ignored it at first, assuming it could wait. Then the calls kept coming one after another until I finally excused myself and checked the screen. 7 missed calls from Courtney. My blood turned to ice. I called her back immediately. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her words. Something about Lily collapsing. Something about an ambulance. Something about the hospital. I do not remember driving there. I do not remember parking. I only remember running through the emergency room doors and finding my wife in a hallway, her face pale and streaked with tears. Lily had fainted during playtime at preschool. One moment she was running with other children, the next she was on the ground unconscious. The teachers called 911 immediately. By the time Courtney arrived, our daughter was already being loaded into an ambulance. The doctors ran tests for hours. Courtney and I sat in the waiting room holding hands so tightly our knuckles turned white. Neither of us spoke. There were no words for the fear that consumed us. When a cardiologist finally came to speak with us, his expression told me everything before he opened his mouth. Lily had a rare congenital heart defect that had somehow gone undetected since birth. The fainting episode was a warning sign that her condition was deteriorating rapidly. She needed surgery, a highly specialized procedure that only a handful of hospitals in the country could perform. The closest facility was in Boston, over 600 miles away. The estimated cost was $250,000. Our insurance would cover a portion, but we would need to come up with approximately $180,000 out of pocket. The doctor told us we had about 3 months. If Lily did not have the surgery by then, her heart would give out. She would not survive to see her 5th birthday. I do not remember leaving the hospital that night. I do not remember the drive home. I only remember lying in bed with Courtney, both of us staring at the ceiling, the weight of those numbers crushing us into silence. $180,000, 3 months, our daughter's life hanging in the balance. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and calculations. We emptied our savings account. We sold everything we could. We started a crowdfunding campaign. We applied for medical loans. After a week of exhausting every option we had raised about $40,000, it was not nearly enough. I did not want to call my parents. Every instinct told me it was a mistake. But Lily's face kept appearing in my mind, her smile, her laugh, the way she said, "Daddy," when she wanted me to pick her up. I would have crawled through broken glass for that little girl. Swallowing my pride was nothing compared to what was at stake. My mother answered on the third ring. I explained everything as calmly as I could. Lily's diagnosis, the surgery, the cost, the timeline. I told her we were not asking for a gift, just a loan. I promised to pay back every single penny with interest. I begged her to help save her granddaughter's life. The silence on the other end stretched for an eternity. Finally, my mother said she needed to discuss it with my father. She would call me back. 2 days passed. 2 days of jumping every time my phone rang. 2 days of hoping against hope. When my father's name finally appeared on my screen, I answered before the first ring finished. His voice was calm, almost businesslike. "Son," he said, "your mother and I have talked it over. We cannot help you with this. That money is our retirement fund. We have been saving it for decades. We cannot just hand it over." I felt my legs give out. I sank onto the couch, the phone pressed against my ear. "Dad," I said, "this is Lily we are talking about. Your granddaughter. She will die without this surgery." "I understand that," he replied. "But you need to figure this out on your own. We raised you to be independent. This is your responsibility, not ours." My mother's voice came through the speaker then. She must have been listening on another line. "Besides," she added, "Derek's wedding is coming up in a few months. We have already promised to give him and Amber the celebration they deserve. You know how important this is to your brother." I could not speak. My brain could not process what I was hearing. "Derek's wedding," I finally managed. "You are choosing Derek's wedding over Lily's life. Do not be dramatic," my mother said. "I am sure you will find another way. You always do." The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, my mind completely blank. Courtney found me like that an hour later. She did not ask what happened. She could see it on my face. She just sat down beside me and held me while I finally let the tears fall. That night, Courtney called her parents. She did not ask them for money. She simply told them what was happening, her voice breaking as she described Lily's condition. She wanted them to know. She needed them to know. Harold and Dorothy arrived at our doorstep at 2 a.m. They had driven 3 hours through the darkness the moment they hung up the phone. Dorothy went straight to Lily's room to check on her sleeping granddaughter. Harold sat down at our kitchen table with an expression I had never seen before. It was determination mixed with something else, something fierce. "We are selling the house," Harold said. Those 4 words hung in the air like a declaration of war. I started to protest, but he held up his hand. "That house is just wood and bricks," he continued. "Lily is flesh and blood. She is our granddaughter. There is nothing to discuss." Dorothy came back from Lily's room with tears streaming down her cheeks. She sat beside her husband and took his hand. "We have already decided," she said. "The house goes on the market tomorrow. Whatever it brings, it is yours." I tried to argue. I told them we could not accept such a sacrifice. I told them there had to be another way. Harold looked me straight in the eyes and said something I will never forget. "You are my daughter's husband," he said. "That makes you my son. And family does not abandon family, not ever." Their house sold in 3 weeks for $195,000. Harold and Dorothy moved into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment without a single complaint. They showed up at our door with a cashier's check and matching smiles, as if they had not just given away the home where they had raised their daughter, the home where they had planned to grow old together. The surgery was scheduled for the following month. We flew to Boston with Lily in early October. Harold and Dorothy insisted on coming with us. They used their remaining savings to cover flights and a small hotel room near the hospital. The four of us took turns staying at Lily's bedside during the pre-surgery preparations. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. The procedure was risky, but Lily was young and otherwise healthy. The odds were in her favor. The morning of the surgery, I held my daughter's hand as they wheeled her toward the operating room. She looked up at me with those big brown eyes and asked if it would hurt. I told her the doctors were going to fix her heart so she could run and play without getting tired. I told her Mommy and Daddy and Grandma and Grandpa would be right there when she woke up. I told her I loved her more than all the stars in the sky. Then the doors closed and she was gone. The next 8 hours were the longest of my life. Courtney paced the waiting room until her feet ached. Dorothy prayed quietly in the corner. Harold sat beside me in complete silence, his presence steady and reassuring. I stared at the clock on the wall, watching the minutes crawl by, bargaining with every higher power I could think of. The surgeon finally appeared in the doorway, still wearing his scrubs. His face gave nothing away as he walked toward us. Time stopped. The world stopped. Everything stopped, except my heart, which was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The surgery was successful, he said. Courtney collapsed into my arms. Dorothy burst into tears. Harold closed his eyes and exhaled like he had been holding his breath for hours. I could not move. I could not speak. I could only stand there holding my wife as relief washed over me in waves so powerful I thought I might drown. We stayed in Boston for 3 weeks while Lily recovered. She was weak at first, sleeping most of the day, but gradually her strength returned. By the time we flew home, she was smiling again, laughing again, asking for ice cream and cartoons and piggyback rides. Our daughter was alive. During those 3 weeks, my phone remained silent. Not a single call or text from my parents. Not a single inquiry about their granddaughter's surgery. I learned later that Derek's wedding took place while we were in Boston. 300 guests, a luxury resort in California. 3 days of celebrations. Total cost $300,000, funded entirely by my parents. My mother sent me a text message on the day of the wedding. It said, "Wish you could be here. Derek and Amber say hello." She attached a photo of the happy couple standing beneath an elaborate floral arch. I showed the message to Courtney. She looked at it for a long moment, then deleted it from my phone without saying a word. That night I blocked both of my parents' numbers. I blocked Derek too. I was done. 5 years passed. Lily grew from a fragile 4-year-old into a vibrant, healthy 9-year-old. The surgery had been a complete success. Her heart was strong. Her spirit was even stronger. She loved soccer and painting and asking endless questions about how the world worked. Every time I watched her run across a field or splash in a swimming pool, I thought about Harold and Dorothy's sacrifice. I thought about the home they gave up so my daughter could have a future. Courtney and I worked hard during those 5 years. I received 2 promotions and nearly doubled my salary. Courtney went back to school, earned her advanced degree, and became a nursing supervisor at her hospital. We bought a house with a big backyard, exactly the kind of place we had always dreamed about. It had 4 bedrooms, a renovated kitchen, and plenty of space for Lily to play. When we moved in, I asked Harold and Dorothy to come live with us. They politely declined, saying they did not want to impose. So I found a small cottage for sale on the same street, just 3 houses down from ours. They moved in the following month. Dorothy could walk over for breakfast whenever she wanted. Harold could watch Lily play in the backyard from his front porch. It was not the same as the home they had sacrificed, but it was something. What they did not know was that I had been quietly saving for years. When their original house came on the market again, I bought it. I kept it as an investment at first, renting it to a nice family. But I always planned to give it back to them when the time was right. I did not reach out to my parents during those 5 years. They called occasionally at first, leaving voicemails I never listened to. Eventually, the calls stopped. I heard updates through distant relatives from time to time. My father had been laid off from the bank during a corporate restructuring. My mother had developed serious health problems. Derek and Amber had divorced after just 3 years of marriage. Apparently, Amber took half of everything in the settlement. Then came the news about Derek's gambling addiction. He had accumulated massive debts, owed money to dangerous people. My parents sold their house to bail him out, the same house where I had grown up feeling like a second-class citizen. They moved into a cheap rental apartment on the outskirts of town. Derek disappeared shortly after cutting off all contact with everyone. No one knew where he went. My father suffered a minor stroke 6 months later. He needed constant care, but they could not afford professional help. Their retirement savings were gone. Everything they had spent their lives building had vanished, consumed by bad decisions and misplaced priorities. Then came the phone call. I was sitting in my living room when my mother's number appeared on my screen. I had unblocked it years ago, figuring enough time had passed. I stared at the phone for several rings before finally answering. Her voice was barely recognizable, thin, shaky, heavy with desperation. She told me everything that had happened. The job loss, the health problems, Derek's betrayal, the stroke, the poverty. She cried as she spoke, apologizing over and over for things she had done wrong. She begged me to meet with her. She begged me to forgive her. She begged me for help. I agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my office. Courtney insisted on coming with me. The woman who walked into that coffee shop looked nothing like the mother I remembered. Linda had aged 20 years and 5. Her hair had gone completely gray. Her clothes hung loosely on a frame that had shrunk with stress and illness. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. We sat across from each other at a small table by the window. She could not stop apologizing. She told me she had been wrong about everything. She told me she regretted choosing Derek's wedding over Lily's surgery every single day. She told me she would do anything to make things right. Then she asked for money. She asked if I could help pay for my father's care. She asked if maybe they could move in with us for a while. I let her finish. Then I spoke. 5 years ago I said my daughter was dying. She needed surgery that cost less than what you spent on Derek's wedding. I came to you on my knees begging for a loan. You told me that money was your retirement fund. You said you could not just hand it over. Do you remember what happened to that retirement fund? She could not meet my eyes. Courtney's parents sold their house, I continued. The only home they had ever known. They gave up everything they had so Lily could live. They are not even my blood relatives, but they understood what family means better than you ever did. My mother started crying again. She said she was sorry. She said she knew she had failed me. I am not going to let you starve, I told her. But I am also not going to sacrifice my family to fix the consequences of your choices. You chose Derek over me my entire life. You chose his wedding over your granddaughter's life. Now you have to live with the results of those decisions. Courtney spoke, then her voice gentle but firm. Mrs. Linda, she said, I do not hate you. I feel sorry for you. But you should understand something. What you are experiencing right now, the fear of losing everything, the desperation, the helplessness, that is exactly what we felt 5 years ago when our daughter was dying and you turned your back on us. The only difference is that we had my parents to save us. You have no one because you pushed everyone away. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card. I placed it on the table between us. This is a non-profit organization that helps elderly people in financial hardship, I said. They can connect you with resources for housing, medical care, and basic needs. I will also arrange for a small amount of money to be sent to you each month, enough to keep you from going hungry. But I will not do it directly. It will go through the organization, and I will not be involved beyond that. My mother picked up the card with trembling hands. She looked at it for a long moment, then looked at me. What about forgiveness? She asked. What about being a family again? I stood up from the table. Forgiveness is something I am working on, I said. For my own peace, not for yours. But family. Family is the people who show up when you need them most. That was never you. Courtney and I walked out of the coffee shop together. We did not look back. That evening I came home to find Lily playing in the backyard with Harold. They were kicking a soccer ball back and forth, both of them laughing like they did not have a care in the world. Dorothy was in our kitchen helping Courtney prepare dinner, the smell of her famous pot roast filling the entire house. I watched them through the window for a long time, my daughter healthy and happy, my wife surrounded by love. My in-laws who had sacrificed everything and never asked for anything in return. This was my family. These were the people who mattered. After dinner I asked Harold and Dorothy to stay for a moment. I had something to give them. I handed Harold an envelope. Inside was the deed to their original house, the one they had sold to save Lily's life. Harold opened the envelope and stared at the papers inside. His hands started shaking. Dorothy looked over his shoulder and her hand flew to her mouth. I bought it back 2 years ago, I explained. I have been waiting for the right moment. The renters moved out last month. The house is yours again. Free and clear! Dorothy burst into tears. Harold tried to speak but could not find the words. He just pulled me into a hug, the kind of hug a father gives a son, and held me for a long time. You did not have to do this, he finally said. I smiled. No, I said. I did not have to. But family does not abandon family. You taught me that. That night, after everyone had gone home and Lily was asleep, I sat alone on my back porch, looking up at the stars. I thought about everything that had happened over the past 5 years. The betrayal, the pain, the healing, the unexpected blessings. I realized that karma is not about revenge. I did not destroy my parents' lives. I did not need to. Their own choices did that for them. They spent decades prioritizing the wrong things and the wrong people. When the bills came due, there was nothing left. But karma is also not just about punishment. It is about consequences, the natural results of the seeds we plant throughout our lives. Harold and Dorothy planted seeds of love and sacrifice. They are now surrounded by a family who adores them, living in the home they thought they had lost forever. My parents planted seeds of favoritism and selfishness. They are now alone, abandoned by the golden child they gave everything to. I do not hate my parents. Hatred would only poison my own heart. I have simply accepted the truth. Some people are not capable of being the family you need them to be, and that is okay, because sometimes the family you choose is far better than the family you were born into. Lily will grow up knowing she is loved unconditionally. She will never wonder if she matters, if she is good enough, if she deserves affection. Courtney and I will make sure of that. Harold and Dorothy will make sure of that. Our daughter will have the childhood I never had, the family I always wanted, and that in the end is the only victory that matters. If my story resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe family is defined by blood or by actions? Have you ever had to walk away from relatives who did not treat you right? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more stories about real life, real struggles, and real triumph, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I hope that whatever family challenges you might be facing, you find the strength to prioritize the people who truly love you. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is walking away from those who hurt you. And sometimes the greatest blessing is discovering that the family you deserve was waiting for you all along. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.